We pass on the most meaningful parts of ourselves. And in my family, I've been the grateful recipient of music. From the time I wore footed pajamas in the small Pennsylvania town of Du Bois, a musical instrument was in almost every single room that I occupied, if it wasn't actually in my hands. My grandmother, her name was May, was a gifted singer, and she also played concert ukulele in the 1930s and in the 40s, which was kind of the beginning of the bluegrass sound, but back then we just referred to it as hillbilly music. But Gram was constantly singing and humming, and I will always remember hearing her voice while she was maybe sewing me some new clothes or baking us bread. My father's parents were very musical, and I remember many Christmas holidays that we spent in their home as a child. And my sister Barb and I were sometimes charged with just holding the music for my grandpa while he played the accordion. Or one of us might be found on the piano bench beside my grandmother while she played and sang along to her very favorite hymns. My mother wasn't a musician, but when anybody said, "So Jerry, what do you play?" her response was, "Well, I play the radio." But my father really was the biggest influence on my musical life. He's been a talented musician his entire life, playing clarinet in the social clubs in a very small town in Pennsylvania, starting at the very tender age of 13, but he played up until just really a few years ago at the age of, when he stopped at the age of about 81. As a young child, though, I often went to band rehearsals with him, and I learned really early how important practicing is, especially when other people are relying on you. My dad also taught me that music is about connection. His bandmates were very much a part of our family, and they still are. It wasn't unusual back then for them to be in our house until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So you don't only pass down the sound of music, but also the sound of kinship, of friendship. And those friends are sharing beers and having lively conversations after late night gigs. And I can vividly remember the sounds of their laughter and the fun that was right outside my bedroom door. And bandmates became brothers and uncles and my family. My grandparents and my father effortlessly passed down sound to my sister and to me. And as soon as I was introduced to music, my whole life really changed. I learned that not only adults could be musicians, but I could be one too. And I suddenly realized that I might be able to be part of this family community, and that was really all I wanted. It's what drove me forward. And once my father started teaching my sister to play the clarinet, I immediately wanted to play a real instrument, as opposed to the tonette that they had rightly given me, but it had no movable keys. So I was very young to start playing the flute, but it was my dad's early lessons and his patience with me that gave me a big musical head start. I was initially inspired to play an instrument to connect with this family tradition, but my relationship with music changed quite a bit in college, where I suddenly found myself surrounded by the powerful and refined sounds of well-trained musicians in an orchestra. But even after college and a business career, I did continue to seek flute instruction and tried to find the best flute teacher that I could. Even though I was only pursuing a hobby, I wanted to continue to play. Ultimately, I studied with the late Julius Baker right up until his death in about 2003. But it was my studying with him that made me realize that it's not just family that passes down sound. Teachers do too. And Mr. Baker gave me a tremendous gift in the time that I had with him, and also the lessons that he gave me. Like many people, I eventually sort of stepped away from my music, and I lost that drive that was propelling me forward. And in 2006, my husband David began a musical immersion of his own, where he was trying to find or create the most effective way for amateur musicians like ourselves to gain access to musical masters, and of course that was the beginning of ArtistWorks. I credit my parents and my family for sparking the love of music for me, but I also credit Mr. Baker, my mentor, for kind of unlocking the possibilities of my playing so that I pursued it throughout my life. It was the combination of those influences, though, that helped inform the model here at ArtistWorks, and it's also inspired me to pass down sound to players around the world.